Welcome to MMO Grinder Backtrack, where I take a look at games I've reviewed previously to check out what's new. Today in May of 2015 I'll be revisiting War Thunder, the military-themed arena shooter that goes for realistic battles and published by Gaijin Entertainment. While the original game and review focused entirely on the air combat, this backtrack will be covering their not-so-recently added tank combat mode, and see how it differs from that other tank game. Just like War Thunder's air combat system, Gaijin attempts to bring in realism, but instead of worrying about things like your pilot sustaining G-forces and the ability to turn without tearing your plane apart, the tanks focus on weak points and crew positioning. Forgoing the simple arcadey feel of tank hit points, all tanks in War Thunder can take a myriad of ballistic punishment or be blown apart by a single well-placed shot. It's all about where you shoot and how that will determine your success. This will come out as pretty frustrating to a newcomer, who might pump round after round into an enemy tank only to have that tank turn around and destroy them with one shot. Now before you scream hacks, which of course does occasionally happen, this is possible for a number of reasons. Take out the crew driving the tank and you just can't go on. Take a clean shot into a full ammo cache and watch the tank's turret jettison into the sky. You can also limit your risk of this happening to you by loading only half of the maximum ammo load to keep more caches empty. Do note that while it's still some people screaming like petulant children, it's more rare and they are mostly ignored by this entire player base. This is another case of silent majority. Some vocal teamwork, but with one or two idiots that have come to be the norm for every genre out there. If you want to increase your chances of success and avoid relying on the community, which tends to ignore chat altogether, you can create a squad of up to 4 people for free and queue into any of the game types. It's a welcome change from when the other tank game wants you to pay real money for the privilege of having 3 people in a squad. There are 3 game modes available within Ground Forces. The first game mode is the most noob-friendly, though still fairly realistic, and is known as the Arcade Battles. The more realistic game type that takes away all enemy indicators and distance-compensating crosshairs is known as Realistic Mode. And the hardcore but not quite a military simulator known as Simulator Mode will take away all assistance, all icons, and comes down to operating your tank while under the constant fear that any number of enemy tanks, or friendly tanks if you're unlucky, are eyeing you up from the hills and preparing to unleash hell on you. It should be noted that while in arcade mode you can choose to start an air campaign by selecting a fighter, bomber, or straight bomber, assuming that you've earned enough points. If an enemy player starts an air campaign, you can then choose to take on the role of a fighter and attempt to bring them down before they do damage to your team. Well, if the game doesn't screw you over and spawns you miles from the bomber, who's almost a second away from being in range of his own targets. There are mixed feelings on allowing planes in arcade mode, as the game allows you to see clear indicators of enemy tanks, making kamikaze rocket planes get free kills on tanks. Honestly, they should just remove all enemy indicators when you go airborne, and it should be noted that realistic and simulator mode don't share this issue, as you both need to take off from a runway and you must select a plane to use. And of course, you don't have enemy tank or even friendly indicators in the case of simulator battles, which will require pilots to choose their targets with care. There's one major issue plaguing these more realistic modes, however. Several users are exploiting the game's low graphics settings, which removes all the natural foliage and cover so they can see everything on the field. Here's some examples of me playing a custom match to show off the issue directly, in case you think I'm making this up, or someone tries claiming that they fixed the problem, as the dense foliage gives way to a wispy forest, and the formerly camouflaged tanks on the hill here are now easily visible and readily available for me to take potshots at. Think of it as wall hacks built directly into the game itself, with the developers saying they can fix it, and then turning around and saying it can't be done because they want to put out more $40 tanks. Now, we aren't calling out anyone who legitimately has to play on the lowest settings, but we are talking about the braggarts who would abuse this bad coding to cheat the system. You know who you are. Another big issue facing the supposed realism is a feature that, on paper, makes sense, but the language of the coding poses a problem. I'll explain. There's a shrapnel mechanic in place that makes it so that once a shell penetrates the armor of your tank, small chunks of metal will fly in random directions to mess up the inside of your tank, possibly hitting your ammo boxes and killing or injuring your crew. The issue lies in that the game does not include an armor penetration table for shrapnel. This means shrapnel ignores all armor, soaring through it as if it wasn't there, since ideally the shell had already passed the armor check. In turn, if anything else were to cause a shell to create shrapnel, like, say, a nearby wall or a rock, said shrapnel would pass through the tank's shielding like it wasn't there. This means your $100,000 armored mobile death machine can be torn asunder by errant chunks of rock. This also needs to be fixed. Those used to how the upgrade system works in the aviation mode should not have trouble wrapping your head around the tank side either, as it's exactly the same. I would heavily advise you make sure to prioritize your research into parts and FPE, aka fire extinguishers, as you'll save yourself a lot of pain and dramatically increase your survivability out there. All in all, it seems many people enjoy the tank portion of War Thunder, and the mode comes across far more popular, as queuing for a tank match will come far faster than a planes match, but both modes are still staffed with many available players. Some Grindstone members note that while they played World of Tanks and consequently steered clear of War Thunder because of the sour taste that World of Tanks left, they have stated that they enjoy War Thunder thoroughly once they actually tried playing the game, because of its more realistic take on the tank combat system. I see the merits of both games, but there's definitely a good amount of charm to War Thunder's Ground Forces mode, glaring issues aside. I'll be sure to check back with this game and others in more episodes of MMO Grinder Backtrack. Oh yeah, I'm still far better at this game in an airplane, and I'll either wreck several tanks in matches or be one-shot within the first minute, and the ability to buy crew points has an ever-present tinge of pay-to-win, but hey, at least it's not gold shells.